1 Corinthians chapter 12, starting in verse 12. 1 Corinthians chapter 12, and we're going to take 12 through 26. Well, one of the podcasts that I listen to pretty frequently is The Briefing with Al Mohler. It deals with news and current events in the light of a Christian worldview. On Tuesday this week, something he said really grabbed me. He said this: "Let me just say we're about to find out which religious bodies on planet Earth have the conviction and the courage, the thick culture to say what they believe and make it stick. I think Orthodox Judaism is a clear example of one of those theological systems and cultures that have made it thick. I think traditional Catholicism has made it thick. I think most of evangelicalism isn't even close to being up to the task. It's just some kind of theological, cultural goo. Let me be clear, that's not going to work. It's going to take something very thick, very substantial, which is why I think it is the thickest forms of deep Protestant, evangelical theology, Protestant doctrine, and say cultural engagement, and yes, living it out in ways in the home and in the church and marriage and in the family. That's going to show where the true Christians actually are." Well, I generally like what Al Mohler has to say. These words I found myself especially encouraged, and I think it was for this reason. I think he just said what I've been trying to say for a couple of years since I've been here. We have got to think seriously about the kind of culture that we are developing here, the kind of culture that we're developing here. Yes, we've got to take doctrine seriously. Yes, we've got to keep the faith. We've got to believe the Scriptures. Yes, we need to have individual times of prayer. But if we're going to survive, if we're going to have something compelling to offer to our non-Christian neighbors, if we're going to pass the faith onto the next generation, we're going to need something more than just that. In Al Mohler's words, we're going to need not just the conviction and the courage about what we believe, but also the thick culture to make it stick. What do I mean by thick culture? I mean the thing that sports teams do. If you play on a good team, even if you play on a bad team, but generally this is the way it is these days, if you play on a sports team at most any level, you don't just practice once a week, right? You practice a lot more than that, usually several times. But not only that, but when you're even not at practice, you're generally running and thinking about the game. You're talking to your teammates. If someone attacks your teammate, what do? You attack them back because these are your people. This is your team. It's not just a game. It's a kind of identity. In the same way, I do hope that you will come to more and more think of your church as your team. Not the team that you root for like the Red Sox, but the team that you play on, like that you actually play on. The Bible is full of stuff like this. It gives us not just things to believe, it gives us practices to practice and practice together. Not just things to believe, but practices. Think about Moses. When they come out of Egypt, and they have been slaves in Egypt for 400 years, and one of the first things that Moses hands them by the finger of God is Sabbath. What's Sabbath? Sabbath is not just an idea. It's not a doctrine. It's a practice. One day in 7 that they would be worshiping and resting as a whole community together. It's something that they do, not just believe, it's something that they do together. It's kind of like how all of the team wears the same colored jersey. Jesus also practices and passes on practices. Think about, what we do. When someone comes to the faith, we don't just go, "Oh, that's great," and then nod and then walk away. What do? We say, "We're going to take you down to the lake, and we're going to dunk you. We're going to put water on you. We're going to do something about that." That is, we're going to put water on you and baptize you in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Christians are not just people who believe. We are people who baptize. Not only that, but we are people who take communion. Right? Because on the night in which he was betrayed, Jesus did not say, "Hey, if you got a chance, try to think of me." He says, do this in remembrance of me. We could go on. We are a church that meets once a week. We are a church that baptizes. We are a church here that does communion here every week. I hope that's not all we do. What I've been urging for the last 2 years is that we must be a church that practices confrontation and forgiveness. Practices. confrontation, and forgiveness. We must be a church that takes very seriously the command to raise our children in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. We must also be a church that eats together and is hospitable. We've got to be a church that does these things. Because our practices are just as important as our beliefs. God is not just interested in changing our hearts, He wants to change our lives, and changed lives start with things like this. Like changing what we do after dinner or on a Sunday afternoon, our schedules. We have been going through the book of 1 Corinthians, right? What have we been seeing in the book of 1 Corinthians? We've been seeing really that Paul has been outlining something like the same thing. The book of 1 Corinthians is all about community. It's all about Christian community. It's all about church community. And what Paul's been pointing out mostly is that there are some practices that destroy Christian community. Practices like what? Like arguing about who's the best teacher and preacher. Practices like looking the other way when someone else is committing sexual immorality. Practices like taking one another to court. Practices like avoiding sex in marriage or going to prostitutes outside of marriage. Practices like being drunk at the communion table. All these practices, not just beliefs, not just things that happen in the head, but things that happen in our habits, those practices destroy Christian community. But he's not just been a negative Nancy, as we've sort of walked all the way through. Sometimes he is. He's confrontational. He's not just that. He's not just showing things that are bad for community. He's also been pointing out things that are good for community, practices that are good for community. In chapter 12, we saw one of these in the very beginning last week, which was what? Well, if a bad practice is a fight over who's the best, what's a good practice? It's a good practice to practice your spiritual gifts. Spiritual gifts, again, are not ideas or doctrines. Sometimes the way people talk about that, we think that it may be a mere doctrine, that we just have an idea of what spiritual gifts are, but they're supposed to be practices. We're actually supposed to be doing something. They're not just ideas, they're practices. And as they are practiced, what happens is that the community gets stronger, it gets healthier, and it gets thicker. Today we're in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 12 through 26. 12 through 26. Paul here, what he's going to do is kind of keep the idea going, and he's going to give an extended metaphor on community. He says that church community is like the human body. It's one of the more famous passages from Paul. Many of you will be familiar with this, even if you don't understand or know very much about Paul's writing. Most of you will be familiar that he thinks that the church is like the body. And the basic idea is this. We're like a human body, therefore every person is different, but also every person is necessary. Every person is different, and at the same time, every person is necessary. Here's my burden for the church. Here's my burden for this morning, but also in general of the question of where are we going. It's this. I am concerned that we might all agree with everything that Paul says about community here and deny it by how we actually live. If I say everyone is different and everyone is necessary, we're all going to nod, right? Who's going to disagree with that? It's so true, it almost feels cliche. But if I come to church irregularly, or if I come to church and I come just on time and I leave right as soon as it's over, if I come and I only ever talk to the same 3 people every week, if I only very rarely invite somebody else who I have met at church before, but I've never invited them into my home, if I don't risk confrontation, if I don't work on forgiveness, then what I've done is I've denied with my life the very thing that I say I believe, right? That's the danger, is that we will preach community but practice independence. And in the end, if independence is what we practice, independence is what we really believe. And so Paul's going to help us here in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, starting in verse 12. In this passage, what Paul's going to do is he's going to confront some of our independence. He didn't know that we were from New England, so this is going to be a particular thing. But he's going to confront some of the independence of us by confronting the lies underneath the independence. The first lie is this: you have no need of me. You don't need me. That's the first lie. The second lie is this: I have no need of you. I don't need you. We usually say it like this: I don't need this. Come now to 1 Corinthians chapter 12, starting in verse 12. We'll read the whole passage. For even as the body is one, and yet has many members. And all the members of the body, though they are many, are one body. So also is Christ. For by one Spirit we were all made to drink of one Spirit. For the body is not one member, but many. If the foot says, because I'm not a hand, I'm not a part of the body, it is not for this reason any the less a part of the body. And if the ear says, because I'm not an eye, I'm not part of the body, it is not for this reason any the less a part of the body. If the whole body were an eye, where would the hearing be? If the whole were hearing, where would the sense of smell be? But now God has placed the members, each one of them, in the body, just as He desired. If they were all one member, where would the body be? But now there are many members, but one body. And the eye cannot say to the hand, I have no need of you, or again the head to the feet, I have no need of you. On the contrary, it is much truer that the members of the body which seem to be weaker are necessary. And those members of the body which we deem less honorable, on these we bestow more abundant honor, and our less presentable members become much more presentable, whereas our more presentable members have no need of it. For God has so composed the body, giving more abundant honor to that member which lacked, so that there are to be no divisions in the body, but that in the members may have the same care for one another. And if one member suffers, all the members suffer with it. If one member is honored, all the members rejoice with it. If we're going to develop thicker community practices here, we're going to have to deal with the lie of shame. The lie of shame is this: you have no need of me. Why don't you need me? Well, you don't need me because I'm not smart. You don't need me because I'm not gifted. You don't need me because I'm not pretty. I'm not important. When we're talking about the lie of shame, what we're talking about is the feeling of being subhuman. It's not the same thing as guilt. Guilt says, I have done something wrong. Shame says, I am something wrong. Now, there's good and there's bad shame. I need to say that because some of us have been told that all shame is always bad. But there's good shame and there's bad shame. Good shame is this. Good shame is when you feel like you have sinned. It's the shame that Adam and Eve felt when they sinned, right? There they are, made perfectly. God comes to them and says, where are you? And they hide themselves. Now, can you imagine? They have defied the almighty, living, kind, loving Father that has given them life. They've defied Him. Can you imagine if they stood there and said, now remember, Eve, no shame. And if they stood there and they said, how do you feel good? Okay, I feel good. Okay, we feel good about what we did. Our self-esteem is great. Can you imagine that situation? We would call that shameless. They had the inability to feel shame when they should have known what shame they have done to themselves. That is, our sin is not just a mistake. Neither is our sin just the byproduct of our environments. Our sin is actually a revelation of who we are. It may be those other things, but it's always also this. It's a revelation of who we really are. When we lust, when we blow up, when we complain, that's really us. That's really us. That's me doing that. Paul says in Romans chapter 7, I know that nothing good dwells in me, that is in my flesh. For the willing is present, but the doing of the good is not. I know that nothing good dwells in me. It's really an expression of shame. That is, I'm not the right way. It's not just something that I did, it's actually something that I am. I'm actually the wrong way. This kind of shame is good because it is honest. That is, we really are not the right way before God, and we know it. Modern society has encouraged us to push that down and to push it away. Sometimes we think that because we're concerned about everyone having healthy self-esteem or healthy visions of themselves, we want to say, never experience shame. That's always the enemy. And so we protect our kids from it, and we protect ourselves from it. And what I want to say is that that's bad because good shame does something really good for us, and that's this. It gets us to stop pretending, and once we stop pretending, we're ready for the mercy of God. If I just made a mistake, I can work hard to fix it, right? But if actually everything I do before God is actually like filthy rags, it's like tainted because of all the things that I am and cannot be in myself, then I'm going to need a complete rescue. That's the gospel. He does not help us with our little self-improvement project. He gives us a complete rescue. And that's what the experience of shame can give us. Lord, I'm not the right way. Will you, from soup to nuts, A to Z, I need a complete overhaul. Save me, all of me. Well, that's shame that is good. There's also shame that's not good. Shame is good when it drives us to God, right? Shame is good when it drives us to God. Shame is bad when it separates us from God. Shame is bad when it separates us from other people. Shame is bad when it makes us stuck. All right, we've gone to God for salvation. Sometimes we've had this experience. You've gone to God for salvation, but you still feel subhuman. We've gone to Him for covering, for clothes, and we still feel naked and exposed. Shame is bad when we're having a hard time letting God lift us up. People of God, please hear this. This is actually what He does. The Lord lifts us up. He lifts us up, it says in Psalm 40, out of the miry clay and sets our feet upon a rock. Or in Psalm 23, where He restores our soul. Or in Psalm 34, that on our faces, therefore, shall be no shame. But sometimes we have a hard time believing that, right? Isn't that the struggle? That we have a hard time believing that He will lift us up. Therefore, we not only feel shame when it comes to God, we feel shame before ourselves, we feel shame when it comes to other people on the street, so that we can't look at them, other people in our family, so we avoid them, and other people in the church, so we feel like they have no need of me here. Paul gives voice to it in verse 15. He imagines the foot, and what's the foot saying? Because I'm not a hand, I am not part of the body. And then he envisions another part of the body, the ear, and that says, because I'm not an eye, I'm not part of the body. That's what shame says. I'm not really part of the body. I don't belong here. Nobody needs me here. That's the idea. And why? Because I don't have a very good gift. I don't have nice, shiny gifts like the rest of you. Do you know my background? Do you know my past? I'm just a foot, not a hand. I'm an ear, not an eye. I'm a single person. I'm not married. I'm an old person. I don't have much energy. I'm divorced. I'm confused. I'm poor. I'm not musical. I'm not funny. To all this kind of thinking that we do all the time, Paul says, stop that. Verse 17. He says, if the whole body were an eye, where would the hearing be? And if the whole were hearing, where would the sense of smell be? So say it's true. Say you're just an ear. Aren't ears important? Say you're just a foot. Don't feet matter? And you can kind of go in, right? You start thinking about stomachs and appendixes and hair and all that. Doesn't the whole body matter? Isn't the whole, all of the parts, don't they all matter? People of God, please hear this. The key to self-esteem is to stop focusing on self-esteem. The key to self-esteem is to stop focusing on yourself altogether. The church has been overtaken by so much pop psychology that we tend to think that the only thing we can do before we can be of any good to anybody else is we've got to feel good about ourselves. That is a lie, and it's a lie that will keep you in what we describe as shame or low self-esteem. The key to self-esteem is to stop focusing on yourself. The point is not you or your particular part. The point is the function of the whole body together. So imagine a single ear kind of like laying there in the corner, right? Somebody cut off an ear, maybe it's a Van Gogh scene or something, and they cut off an ear, and there it is laying in the corner. How does that ear feel about itself? You will forgive it for having bad self-esteem. There it is. Oh, gross. But if you take that same ear and you put it on the side of the head where it's supposed to be, where God has placed it and put it, it's not only functional, it's beautiful. If you struggle with shame, you're going to need to confront the lie of shame. Here's a couple things that I recommend for you to do in the process. I wrestle with this. You wrestle with this. We wrestle with this. So if you are wrestling with shame, here's a couple things you'll need to do. Number one, recognize that it's a lie. It is true you have sin. It is true that you struggle. It may even be true that if everyone knew everything you thought and did, they would go, oh, that may even be true. It's also true that you are fearfully and wonderfully made. It is also true that you have been given real gifts, and real gifts that other people need here. You have gifts that other people need here. Therefore, when the devil whispers to you or tells you that no one needs me around here, I'm just a burden, let me encourage you, use righteous anger and fight back. And you say, that is a lie. Get it into your language. That's a lie. You recognize that it's a lie and then fight back. Use a little godly anger. That's what it's for. Fight the devil. Recognize that it's a lie, number one. Number two, submit to the sovereignty of God. It is true that we don't all get the gifts or the opportunities that we want, right? We look back and we think, oh, I wish this had happened, or I wish I had been given this or that. It's true that we don't get the parents that we want, or the friends, or the church members that we want sometimes. We look around and we think, why can't this be a different thing? It is also true that your story is not a story told by you. Your life is a story told by God. Let me invite you to think about this. Don't fight the author. Consider what the author is doing for you with these people, with these gifts, underneath these opportunities and these experiences. Paul says in verse 18, please look at it. Verse 18, God has placed the members, each one of them, in the body just as He desired. God has placed the members, each one of them, in the body just as He desired. So submit to the sovereignty of God. And as you look around, you say, apparently, I must need you, and you must need me. Apparently, this is the body that God is building. Submit to the sovereignty of God and do that with joy. So first, recognize that it's a lie. Second, submit to the sovereignty of God. Not just the things that other people are bringing, but what do you bring? Your life, your gifts. That's a gift of the sovereignty of God, and use it for the best, for the good of the body. Submit to the sovereignty of God. And the third thing is this: reach out to others. I don't mean to reach out to others and to ask them to help you. There is a place for that. There's absolutely a place for that. But consider a different tactic. Consider reaching out to others to see how you could help them. So say you're depressed, say you're feeling pretty ashamed, say you're feeling like that nobody needs me. Consider making the phone call and say, how can I help you? How can I serve you? Ask them out for coffee. If they say no, ask somebody else. That can happen, right? We get all excited, like the pastor said I should make a phone call. And so I made a phone call, and they said, sorry, too busy. And now I'm, all the air's out of my balloon. Let me encourage you, if they say no, go to someone else. They'll need you. Maybe it was just a bad week, just a bad time. Invite them to have dinner. Invite them to watch a movie. Invite them to go to a concert. Make a list of all the birthdays in the church and make them a birthday cake. Grab a broom, sweep their steps, rake their leaves. When you go on a trip, you could say, you know what, is there someone here that I could take along with me? Reach out to others. Why? Because shame goes away when we find our place in community. That's the first lie. The first lie that we're going to have to confront is the lie of shame. You have no need of me. The second lie that we're going to have to confront if we're going to have thick community here is this. It's the lie of independent pride. It's this: I have no need of you. Come to verse 20. Now God has placed the members, each one of them, in the body, just as He desired. If they were all one member, where would the body be? But now there are many members, but one body. And the eye cannot say to the hand, I have no need of you. Or again, the head to the feet, I have no need of you. After about 20 years of ministry, I have made this observation. I share it with you. Independent people are both a gift and a plague on the church. Independent people are a gift because if you say to them, would you please cook this meal? Would you please practice this song? Would you please fix this window? Independent people do it. You could walk away from them, and they just sort of they get it done. You don't have to worry about it. They're reliable. The tendency is that independent people tend to be reliable, and that's a real gift. Independent people can also be a plague. They're a plague because if someone says, hey, can I help you fix that window? They say, or most likely they hint, that no, you'll just get in my way. If someone says, hey, how about a cup of coffee? They say, do you have any idea how busy I am? I do not have the time for you. The thing that's interesting to me is this observational. I don't think they're trying to be jerks. They actually often feel like they're being nice to you. They feel like they're freeing you from an obligation. They figure you don't really want to help and that you don't really want to have coffee, and so they're doing you a favor by cutting you free the way they want to be. What independent people don't easily understand is that this is actually painful to the rest of us. And Paul puts this finger on exactly how it feels. And you would probably have said it this way yourself. I have no need of you. That's what it feels like. You're saying again and again in 100 different ways, I have no need of you. Paul deals with this lie in the same way that he dealt with the lie of shame, and that's this. He puts it in the context of the whole body. He says, regardless of how you feel, you really do need the rest of us. You are just one part of the body. Take away the body, you lose your meaning. Picture a preacher preaching to a church with no people in it. How good was the sermon? Picture a music leader leading no one. How good was that worship service? Picture a trustee fixing a building that no one uses. Whatever your skill is, it really does only have meaning in the context of community. We can go further, and very often we have to go further again because we are New Englanders. We are definitely DIY sort of folks. Maybe you own your own business. Maybe you can fix your own car. You can build your own house. Maybe you can educate your own kids, and maybe you can sew your own clothes, and you can cook your own food that you grew in your own land. All that's actually very good. But you need to know that even if you have done all of those things, and very few of us do all of those things, even if you did all those things, you actually haven't done them all by yourself. A business owner still needs customers and a stable economy. A builder needs materials, and a mechanic needs tools, and a teacher needs books. Go back as far as you want, whatever independent you think you are. We'll always get something from someone. The question is this, whether or not you are too proud to recognize that. Other people are needy and dependent, but me, I'm standing here like a rock on an island. Now to this, some of us might say, you know what, I know that I need people eventually. I know that there's a way that I can't get away from everybody. I just want to get away from you. I want to choose my own community, like a fantasy football team. I don't mind the fact that I need other people. I just don't want to need the people right in front of me. I don't want to be told that I really need this church. I want to belong to the church on the internet, somewhere in Kansas. That is exactly what Paul is addressing here. That is, he's saying that we need the people right in front of us. We need not just a church or the church. We need this church. That's really what Paul's saying. The analogy of the body is not for the universal church. It's not all the churches out there. He's saying you need the local church. It's not about Christian friends generally. That's not what he's saying. He's not saying you don't make sure that you have community. He's saying you need the local church, the local organized church. You need this one. Very particular. The people in the local church of Corinth are dividing from one another. That's the thing that we've seen again and again in various ways. And what Paul's saying is, look, you need the people in this room. You need them, and they need you. He says that to Corinth, and he says that to Pittsfield. I need you, and you need me. Because it's not about any one of us or our felt needs. This is the thing about independence. We tend to think, why would I bother joining a church? Why would I bother really committing to all of this stuff? I get all my felt needs elsewhere. And that idol has to be smashed. That idol has to be smashed. It's not actually about you or your individually felt needs. The church is not Walmart where you can just happen to get all the stuff in one place. It's not about you or your felt needs. It's about God, and it's about what God is sovereignly doing in the world to bring the world to salvation and to bring glory to himself. And it's about how he has drawn each of us from many different roads into this place at this time. Just think of it. It's about that. Verse 18, one more time. God has placed the members, each of them, the body just as he desired. You got to think of that. That God has actually placed you here and me here. 5 minutes of an exercise. I encourage you to take, when you're in prayer this week, take 5 minutes and just think about how God has placed this person in your life on purpose at this time and place, at this church. Start with the ones you don't like. Really, start with the ones that are hard. It's a really good, you're like, okay, this is what the Lord wants from me. It's true that dealing with some people feels like, sometimes it's like you feel shocked by an electric fence. Like you're walking in a field and suddenly you're hurt and don't understand what just happened. It does hurt. Here's the encouragement. Consider the good thing that God might have for you. That is, sometimes we're stubborn and sometimes it does take a shock to wake us up. Just think about what God is doing underneath the scenes at this time and place in this room. The key to maintaining unity in the church is that you need to remember that this is not your body. This isn't your body. This is the body of Christ. It all belongs to him. Verse 12 says this, "For even as the body is one and yet has many members, all of the members of the body, though they are many, are one body." And then he adds this, "So also is Christ." He's not just talking about you and the different people and parts of your life. He's talking about the body of Christ in the local church. That is, we're just little parts. We matter, but the body does not belong to us. Therefore, if we pull out, think of this, if you pull out, you're not just hurting other people around you. You are hurting other people around you if you pull out. But you're not just doing that, you're actually hurting Christ. Now, it's not as though Christ has not given us what we need to stay in. Verse 13 says this, "For by one Spirit we were all baptized into one body, whether Jews or Greeks, whether slaves or free, and we were all made to drink of one Spirit." Christ has given us his Spirit. We receive him when? At baptism. And also, it seems here that he's suggesting that we're also filled by the Spirit at communion, because he says we all drink of one Spirit. What Paul is going to do here, what Paul is doing here, is he's calling us back to the two most basic things, two basic practices that we have that unify us. We don't all love hunting. We don't all love field hockey. We don't all love gardening. Not everybody loves field hockey. But you don't want to go to the church that's the field hockey church or the gardening church. We have been given the Spirit of God, and so no matter what we don't share, what he's saying is, you know what you do share? You share baptism and communion, and that should be enough. So let me think now about some practices, just going to think with me. And I really do. I invite you to think with me. I'm giving some things on paper, but I hope that your mind will churn with some of these things. Some practices that might help us to thicken Christian culture here, so that we would not say, oh yeah, of course everybody belongs, everybody serves, everybody's important, even though we're all different. We wouldn't just say that, but we would actually have some ways to do that, to practice that. So I've preached that we're one body with many members. How might we practice that? I think it's helpful to break your life down into several places. I'm going to focus on 3: home, work, and church. You might want to continue this and think about town and nation, but we're going to stick with the first 3: home, work, church. Number 1, how can I encourage thick Christian practices at home? Start with talking about Christian things at home. Talk about them. Take the things that we do here and practice them each week. By the way, that is structured so that you would be able to do that. That is, take the Lord's Prayer and pray it at home. Take the catechism, teach your kids with it. Sing the songs during the week, the ones that we sing here. Sing them after supper. Take the sermon and talk about it. Think about it. Work on eating together with the television off and the phones put away. And then you'd use that time to talk about world events and why they matter and what's going on. Or, hey, that movie that we watched, why that's good or why that's bad, or why parts of it are good and why other parts of it are bad. Talk about things that matter. Make it a practice to talk about significant things when you're around the table, or when you're in the car on the way to soccer practice, or on a hike. But talk about things. If you want to have Christian community, don't overlook your home. It's not just other people, it's also people in your own home, and you can do that. Talk with them. Another thing is to open your home to others. Have people over for dinner. If you get tired at night, or if you work weird hours, invite them for breakfast. Everyone loves a, hey, come on over at 5:30 kind of invitation. They love that. Maybe a snack. Maybe you're like, okay, I don't do that, but I can pop popcorn. Come over and have popcorn. If you invite people and they say no, again, try not to take it personally. They might take some time for them to warm up as well. We can, again, just invite somebody else. There's a bunch of us here. We could try a bunch. Also, you don't have to make it all about food. You might invite people over to help with the garden, or help you put on your roof, or go on a bike ride, or pick up trash in the park. That's how you might do that in your home. How about your work? We often think about our work being a place of evangelism, and that's good and right. It can also be a place of rich Christian community. If you own a business, consider hiring Christian workers so that you can have Christians who are being able to provide for their families in this kind of difficult time in the economy. But also, you might consider, since you have some authority with them, consider saying a short prayer before you start the day. Lead them in that. One thing that's interesting right now is a lot of people are interested in the Bible in a way that they have not been for a long time. So a lot of people say, what is it that you're believing and where do you get it from? You could do a little Bible study, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, even at your work. It could be evangelistic, but it could also just be the encouragement of doing a little book study or a little Bible study, even at, you got an hour for lunch, you got a half an hour for lunch, take 15 minutes of that and enjoy some Christian community at your work. How about church? Here's some encouragement or some advice. Come early, stay late. Volunteer for stuff. Confront, right? Don't let things that irritate you fester so that you say, okay, never mind, I'm done. But confront. Forgive. A church that's all confrontation is pretty rough, right? Right? But a church that pretends that there's no forgiveness necessary is pretty rough as well. Ask people their middle names. Ask them what they do for fun. If someone is new, show them where the bathroom is or how to find the kitchen. Because all this stuff kind of adds up. If all of us are doing all kinds of little things that we think about how they're necessary and how we all have a part to play, as we do that, it all adds up and it warms up the environment and people to feel like this could be home. A church culture where it's expected that we just smile and wave, and you know what I mean. That community for us is sort of like, waving to someone across the way, like as though we were at a gas station. Hey, I know their name, I have no idea. Actually, I know their face, but I have no idea what their name is. An environment like that is pretty thin, and it's very easy to walk away from a culture like that. A culture where it's expected that we will not only worship together, but we will eat together. We will be in each other's homes. We'll actually know the names of each other's kids. Where there's not actually this big, strong line between worship and work. Or a big, strong line between church and home. Okay, I go out to church, but my home is my castle. Tear that wall down. All of that's really thick, and a thick culture is really hard to walk away from. That's one of the things that we are so excited about when we go to sports is that we feel like, oh man, these are like my people. I feel like these are my companions. These are my band of brothers. There's culture like that. You feel like that was significant. We want church to be not taking its cue from those teams, but they're often doing it better than we are. Together we are the body of Christ. I need you and you need me. And we need to do more than just believe that. We need to practice that. So consider, what is one new thing that you might do this week to drive home the belief that we are actually a body? How might you make it stick? Maybe a phone call, maybe joining a study, maybe asking the kids or the wife or the guys at work to pray. Maybe organizing a service project around town. Maybe asking the name of the person right beside you. Because they matter. So do you. I invite you to stand up and to sing.